each patient is living their life and they're oblivious to other people, but it's looking at each person and caring for that person. And I know they're only humans as well, but it's, going that extra mile to make sure their patients are okay. And I think for me, my consultant, I always say to her, thank you for everything. She always tells me, what are you saying thank you for? It's my job. I'm saying, no, this is not your job. You've gone over and beyond, because I have seen others do their job and they don't do half of what you do. And if every consultant or every medical staff or every midwife was like my consultant, I think the outcomes would be very different for a lot of women, because she paid attention, she cared, she listened, she helped, she went beyond expectation.
Hello, my name's Josephine Oyolola, co-founder of the Mummy and Me app, an online tool that aims to address racial health inequalities in maternal and newborn mortality and morbidity through advocacy, empowerment, and education. This podcast is a collaboration with the Pick Up the Mic network and will focus on maternal health inequalities. A 2021 report found that women from ethnic minority backgrounds have lower chances of having a baby through fertility treatment, with declines most sharply among Black women. Additionally, a 2020 report into maternal deaths found that Black women in the UK are 4 times more likely to die during pregnancy. It's more important than ever to raise awareness and ensure that progress continues to be made to reduce these inequalities. This Black History Month, the theme is Saluting Our Sisters, and we have brought together an inspirational panel of women to talk about maternal health, both the challenges and the amazing work they are doing to address this. We have Keji Moses, a writer, nurturer, podcaster, empowerment and inspirational speaker with a passion for helping mums practice self-love, follow their purpose and be the light in their life and the world. We also have Vanessa Hay, a women's health writer, speaker and infertility blogger who wants to break down the stigma that's attached to infertility in some Black communities. We also have Funke Oham, award-winning mentor, speaker and author dedicated to supporting people who are trying to conceive and have experienced baby loss. And last but not least, we are joined by Jessica Bonzi, project manager for the Mental Health Foundation's Amplifying Maternal Voices project. There is a trigger warning for this episode as we will be discussing baby loss, birth trauma, and mental health, as well as other linked issues.
So for this year's Black History Month, we've brought together a panel of inspirational women to talk about maternal health, both the challenges and amazing work they're doing to address this. This year's theme is Saluting Our Sisters, so I'll open by asking each of the panelists which Black woman has inspired you, either past or present, and why. I'll go to Jessica first.
So for me, I struggled with this one just to find one, because I think there's many inspirational Black women that have inspired me. But I think for me, choosing one was Mallory Blackman. So I'm a keen reader, and growing up in a predominantly white area, I had lots of racial abuse in primary school. And from the age of 12, I think the book was released in 2001, I think. I just felt the way she depicted race was really inspiring. It gave me a lot of confidence to walk as a dark-skinned Black woman in a white school, in a white area. I would say she's really inspirational to me in how I find myself, how I conduct myself at work, how I embrace myself and my children with race. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I think, her books are the only ones I've read and didn't put down.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted the next one as soon as possible. I'll go to Funke next.
Okay, so hi. So I agree with Jessica that it was quite hard to choose one Black woman that inspires me. But I'll go with Rosa Parks because I like what she stood for. So someone once said that it's not enough for you to stand for what is right, but you must let people know what you stand for. So I think she stood up for what she believed in and inspired others to stand up as well. So I think that's one Black woman that inspires me.
Thanks. Vanessa?
this is really random. In fact, if I had more time and I had more choices, I probably wouldn't pick her. But the person that comes to mind off the cuff is Gabrielle Union. And the reason why is because although actually if you kind of went to a couple of people, there's controversies around certain stuff about her. What I take from her example is she was one of the first Black women actresses that openly spoke about her fertility challenges and journey. And I think for those that have done it, and not that it's probably for those that have done the same, the common denominator is really the baby at the end. And hers was quite a different route of surrogacy. You don't get anyone speaking about it, let alone Black women. And I loved the fact that she was so open about her miscarriages and just her journey. And I love her for that. And I think just generally, she's always just been that Black celebrity that very much encourages other Black women to realize that they're not alone. There's just something there's something really bold about her that I really like. So she's who comes to mind, particularly in terms of the parallels with our journey.
Yeah. No, I agree. I watched an interview with her talking about. I was like, I didn't know any of this stuff. Quite powerful. And Keji.
I choose Maya Angelou because she's a devoted activist and a feminist leader, which I resonate with because I consider myself as an activist and a feminist leader. For me, Maya Angelou has inspired many generations with her life and work, and she has an ability to deeply understand other people, communicate effectively, and she leads with empathy and compassion. And one of her famous quote, which she spoke about in an interview, was that if you can't change it, then change the way you look at it. Move to another position to look at it, and in doing so, you might find a new way to change it. So she has an ability to have a perspective shift and understand ideas holistically. And this is quite an important part of her movement, really. So I really love the fact that she's creative, and I love the fact that the way she expresses herself through words and her creativity has inspired many generations. So Maya Angelou.
Yeah, no, she's a font of wisdom. I keep a lot of her quotes as screensavers when I'm having a hard day. I get inspiration. So I'll also like to ask you to briefly share about your fertility and maternity journeys. I'll switch up the order a bit this time. Vanessa, did you want to go first?
Not really, but I can start. Fertility journey, I'll make it as succinct as possible. So I think mine came about really the conventional way of getting married. I'm from a Christian background. So essentially we tried to be sustained from sex before marriage, and we tried our best. We got married in 2014 in May. And I think because we'd been together since meeting in uni, so when I was 18, he was 21 at the time. By the time we got married, we were in a different way. We knew each other enough to be open to trying to conceive, and I carefully say not start a family, but grow our family, because we very much earlier on recognized that we were a family together, that we wanted to grow the family. And quite soon after, I was on the pill initially. That wasn't working for me for all the horrible kind of side effects that you get if you're familiar with it. We decided that we'd take the risk and come off the pill thinking, there's a risk that we could get pregnant. Unbeknownst to us, that actually it was a polar opposite. 6 to 9 months down the line, I wasn't ovulating, having cycles, let alone falling pregnant. Not that we'll try, but, because of the risks of not being on contraception. So I think around 2015, tried some hormonal kind of, it's called a Clomid, that's to help me ovulate for a couple of months. Didn't work. Then got referred to a fertility clinic to start a few more cycles of clomid, but monitored to figure out what was going on with my cycle, blood tests and all that kind of stuff didn't work. Then got fast tracked to having something called an IUI, which is, I'll just say in layman's terms, a turkey-based method of conception. So they try and bring sperm closer to the egg and insert it using the tool. From my understanding, it did work, but very early on, what we call biochemical pregnancy, didn't continue. And at that point, I decided that I'd had enough of those kind of interventions. I wanted something that probably gave better results. And so we went straight onto IVF. Thankfully, thank God, not many people know this, but depending on the CCG that you come under, I can't remember what CCG stands for, so if anybody's in that area, you can tell me. But depending under the CCG you come under, there are rules. So for Leicester, where I live, I think it was 1 free fresh cycle. So that's a full cycle of getting eggs retrieved. That's for free. And then any subsequent cycles where you use those combined eggs is where that's for free as well. So thankfully for us, it was a successful fresh cycle. We had our first embryo transfer from that cycle a couple of months later. So we're now at November, December 2016. That was successful, but resulted in our first miscarriage. And then we carried on, had our second transfer a couple of months after. That was successful, very challenging pregnancy, and that's now our 5-year-old son called Sebastian. 18 months after having Sebastian, so we had Sebastian in February 2018, we actually, after all of that, conceived naturally. But that actually, unfortunately, was an ectopic pregnancy. So if you're not sure what that is, it's when the fertilized egg starts to grow outside of the womb. Most times in a fallopian tube, which was the case for me, there's 1% chance that sometimes it's an ovary. The latter wasn't my case. Mine was a fallopian tube. It was life-threatening. So we had to end up having surgery. Sorry, I didn't even put a trigger warning out. We had to end up having surgery. I had to end up having surgery, which was successful, but it meant that we lost the baby because you have to remove the embryo of the baby from the tube, and I lost my tube as well. And then I guess there was a lot of trauma and healing that came from that journey. I'm not going to go into details of what happened after, but fast forward, that was September 2019, and we now have a near to 2-year-old son that's followed that journey. In between the ectopic and having our son, I was then, after so many years of having irregular cycles, finally was diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, is that what it is? Diagnosed in November 2021, I think it was. But, so many years after, we have 2 full miracle babies, and that's the journey. So I think that's really what got me to where I am now, which I imagine you're going to ask in the later questions. Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing and being so open. Oh, and for people who may not know, a CCG is a clinical commissioning group. There's so many acronyms, it's because I work in health. But yeah, I will add a bit about it in the description. And I really like the concept of like growing a family rather than starting, because as like a couple, you are a family. You're not like lacking anything. Yeah. So yeah, I love that concept. Keji, do you want to go next?
Yeah, fine. So for me, my challenges with infertility began in my mid-20s. So I experienced secondary. It's very hard to pronounce this to me, so bear with me. So it's called amenorrhea. It's called. So what does that mean? It means absence of periods for 3 months and over. And I had irregular periods over a long period of time. At one point, I didn't have no periods for 3 years. But because I was still in my mid-20s, I did not really think much about it, because starting a family wasn't really something that I was ready for at that point. But I think as time progressed, I began to be a lot more concerned as to what was causing this. So I had regular visit to the hospital and they did numerous tests, and they discovered that I had cysts on my ovaries and I needed a laparoscopy to remove it. And the surgery was successful, and my period returned a few months later, but that sadly did not last that long. And I was diagnosed with menorrhagia, which is heavy and prolonged bleeding. So I went from one extreme to the other. And the extreme end of that was I bled for 3 months continuously, and I couldn't even go to work. It was that bad. But over the years, I managed it with medication, and I've had several operations, laparoscopy, had hysteroscopy as well. And so, it wasn't the what's the word? The underlying issue was not actually identified until recent year. So after a period of time, I was pregnant with my son in 2008, and naturally I didn't have to go through any fertility treatment, and he was born. And then after he was born, for many years, my period disappeared again. I was having irregular periods, and there was a lot of consultants appointments that I had to go to, and they realized I had another cyst that was growing in my ovaries. I had to have that removed. And so, but they didn't understand what was causing it. At first they thought it was PCOS. Am I correct? Yeah. Yeah. And then they realized maybe not. Then they thought it was fibroids, and then they said maybe not. So they could not actually identify what it was. And so after my son was nearly 3 years old, I thought, I would like to have another child. And so we started, preparing to have another child, and then I fell pregnant, and I was quite excited about it until my 12-week scan. I went for my appointment. Everything was okay up until then, and they discovered there was no heartbeat. And so at that point, that's the ever first time I've had that experience. And I found the whole experience quite clinical. It was a matter of, we're sorry, there's no heartbeat. What would you like us to do about it? And I just sat there, really just couldn't speak, shocked. I didn't know what to do. So I said to them that I wanted to go home. I did not want to have any operation. I wanted everything to happen naturally. But in saying that, I did not realize that my body wasn't really ready to let it, go through that process naturally. So I was at home in 2 weeks until, I was able to, go through that whole process. And that was that. But that plunged me into quite a depressive period. And I was, I just cried continuously because I didn't know the reasons why this happened. But and so I can go into the next phase. But that's my fertility kind of experience. It's been up and down.
Thank you, Kechi, and thanks again also for being really open about your experience. And there are so many conditions and they're really difficult to pronounce, so we'll put them in the description just in case it would be helpful to listeners.
Okay, so got married at the age of 24. I think personally, I'm a goal setter. So I had all these goals laid out, get married, finish my postgraduate qualification, come off the pill, get pregnant, and then happily ever after. Only if life was that simple. So I came off the pill about 12 months after I got on it. And a friend of mine was on the pill, and she kind of said to me she felt pregnant right away. So I thought, okay, hopefully that'll be my case. And I thought, okay, well, sometimes I know there's a bit of a delay. So 3 months, I thought, okay, well, nothing to worry about. Let's give it another couple of months, and 6 months, and then 9 months, and then 1 year. I'm like, hello, something is going on here. So I had a brief word with one of the nurses, because I'm very, very private person. I didn't want to go to the GP and start talking about, we've been trying to conceive, maybe there's an issue here. So, but I think it was just in passing. I spoke to one of the nurses, and she was like, okay, watch what you eat, look after yourself. But if it continues, then, it's probably best to check it out. So I think we got to about 16 months. And I thought, well, so I said to my husband, I think we probably need at this point to go and check out. Maybe something is going on that we have no idea about. And then I kind of started feeling moody one day, and he kind of said to me, maybe you're pregnant. I'm like, I don't think so. He said, well, let's just do the test. So we did, and we found that we're pregnant. And it was like, wow. It was like, that moment where you are shocked, and you're staring at the kids, and you're thinking, really? I think it's different now. I think the kids whereby it tells you pregnant. Those days you had to wait for like minutes and wait for the sign anxiously. So you're talking about 17 years ago. So it's different now. So I couldn't believe. I was just in shock, staring at it, thinking, wow, it's happened. And it was like, okay, we won't tell anybody till 3 months. Let's get through the danger phase and make sure that everything is okay. And I thought naively then, 3 months was like, after 3 months, nothing can go wrong. So that's kind of what I thought then. And we got, all the way, and everything seemed okay. I one appointment, I think the consultant said to me, oh, your baby is a bit small, but because you're petite, maybe there's nothing to worry about. And I thought, okay. And then 5 days before delivery, he had booked another scan just to reassure himself. I'd gone for a scan, and they what's the name now? Forgotten the name's going out of my head. Person that does, sonographer kind of said, oh, you've nothing to worry about. Don't worry, baby will be here in a few days and everything will be fine. And I thought, yeah, I'm, really relieved. And then went home. But prior to that, I think when some of my midwife appointments, I think she had picked up, I had like a couple of pulses in my urine, but she didn't flag it as anything. And I thought, well, maybe nothing. Thought nothing of it. When they went into delivery, the day I went into labor, my mom was here and she'd come in from Nigeria. I was in serious pain. I was like, I've never been in labor before, so I didn't know what to expect. But I thought, this is what labor is all about. Back, head, I didn't even know where to touch. Got into the hospital, very hard to lie down. Eventually, they got me to lay on the bed, and they found it hard to find my son's heartbeat. But eventually, they found it, and I thought, well, and they were monitoring him, it seemed okay. And then I think I was in so much pain. I was given some pain relief. And I opened my eyes at one point, and I saw there were quite a lot of, doctors and, in the room, and nurses. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? I was quite drowsy. And I could hear the consultant, rather than registrar, not consultant, saying to me, do you understand? There's no heartbeat. I'm thinking, what's talking about? There's no heartbeat. I came in here a couple of hours ago, ready to have a baby. The baby's heartbeat, we could hear it. So I thought, no, that can't be possible. But, I couldn't just comprehend that. I just thought, no, I can't believe that. Let's just wait and see. I thought, well, when the baby comes, I'm sure he's alive. And if he's not, I'm sure there'll be a miracle. But anyway, he was born, and everyone was just like silence. It was, you could actually feel the air in the room. I think my husband grabbed him immediately and started resuscitating him. I was in and out, but I could see that picture. And that's a picture that has stayed with me, always stayed with me. And I think everyone was just looking at him. And I was like opening my eyes, closing them, and I just thought, this can be. Eventually, anyway, they told him anyway he's gone. Of course, he was gone before he was born. But I think, it was just that father's instinct. And that's kind of where we were at. My mom was there. We were all staring at, the baby in the Moses basket. And it was like, that wasn't the plan. I never foresaw that. I never expected that. Growing up, I know people lose babies, but I don't think it registered that people do lose babies. I never actually linked that with myself or understood what that really meant in practice. And it was just having to walk down that road, a lot of questions, a lot of, going back and forth, getting into my notes, reading my notes, asking questions, because I just thought it just didn't make sense. But yeah, there were a lot of issues we had to flag with the hospital in terms of my care and what had happened. But and then, well, apparently what happened was that the placenta had detached from the baby while I was in hospital. So what they all said to me was sudden, and I had preeclampsia. We know when I think they said it all was sudden as well. So I guess the plus signs in the urine were symptoms that this was beginning to actually start, but no one picked that up. But they said everything happened very suddenly. So there was really nothing anyone could have done. So it was a very painful, difficult time because it just wasn't, going from a point of waiting to tell people you've had the baby. People actually calling the message on the phone as baby arrived, and then having to tell them such bad news. So yeah, it was really, really hard. A lot of things to walk through and process. And then a few months later, I became pregnant, even though some doctors gave me conflicting information. Maybe this will happen to you again. Some said, well, wait for X number of months. Some said, give it a big break. And some said, well, try right away. So it was all kind of conflicting, but we kind of thought about it, prayed about it. We decided when we were ready, we would try again. And I became pregnant quite quickly, which was a relief. And I was glad it was a girl. So I just thought I didn't want to think of my son in that way, having another boy. And then, everything seemed fine until 23 weeks. And I thought, okay, I will take a break. I was a workaholic. I walked right up to my son being born. So this one, I said 6 months, I'm done with work. I'm going to just sit down at home and relax. And then 23 weeks, just 2 days before I was going on maternity leave, I started feeling some tummy pains at work. And I thought, it doesn't look right. But I thought, well, it's manageable. And then it just progressed, and it just intensified. So I called my consultant. This was a different hospital. I thought, based on my bad experience, I'm not going back to the same hospital. So I called him. He was away. And he said to me, go to the hospital if it continues. So I made my way home. And by the time I got home, I was in intense pain. And I thought, what's going on here? So my husband said, you lie down, keep an eye. He brought me some dinner. And then later I just said, you know what, this pain feels like the first time I think I'm in labor. And we thought, that can't be. So we called the ambulance. It took a while. So he said, let's just go. So he took me down, got to hospital, kind of said to them at the desk, I'm in labor. And he said, no, you can't be. How far gone are you? 23 weeks and 5 days? Like, it's impossible. I said, I'm in labor. They got me in, checked me, and I think I was about, it was 7 or 8 centimeters dilated. And when I did my research, I kind of knew that even though it was that early, they could stop they could stop labor. But I think they said to me, no, you're far gone. We can't do anything to stop it. And my daughter was born, I think, a couple of hours after. Extremely tiny, 500 grams, mega tiny. Even the hospital wasn't equipped to look after her because it wasn't a specialist hospital. So they did arrange to take us to another hospital or take her. But that went through all the night and they hadn't come. And I think last morning they were kind of like saying to us, she's got brain damage, she's got this, she's got that, and they came back saying to me, you have to let her go. I'm like, let her go? I said, no, we're fighting. We can't lose another one. I mean, that was just like my vocabulary, listen, like we're fighting to the end. They kept on doing all they could. They were trying to stabilize her before taking her to Homerton Hospital. And then, they came in and said, she's going, they brought her out of the incubator and asked me to, cuddle her, and she passed away in my arms. So it was like 1 minute the day before I was at work and kind of wrapping up with work. And the next minute I was there in the hospital reliving the same nightmare. So I think even later that I said to my husband, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. Let's just forget it. Let's just go, settle down with baby. We're going to adopt, and I think we're actually thinking of fostering before we actually became pregnant the first time. So I was open to adopting and fostering. So that wasn't an issue for me. I just thought, no, I can't go through this again. But to cut the long story short, a few months later, I decided, let's try again. I changed my mind. And in the same year, we lost Faith. We're blessed with a son. Same year. So Faith was born in February 2007. Our son was born December 24, 2007, and was born full term. And I was under an excellent consultant who looked after me throughout our pregnancy. Amazing woman. I'm still in touch, 17 years on. Very amazing woman. I mean, she was an answer to prayer. I can't never thank her enough. But yeah, so he was born 2007, Christmas baby, best present ever. And then 3 years after, we were blessed with another son. So yeah, so that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Thank you also for being really open. I think one thing about all your journeys you mentioned so far is that, I think you don't always see the sort of, ideal journey is going to apply to everyone. Like I do remember loads of aunties growing up like asking loads of questions about like birth and like how far along people are, and it's often out of love, but I think it's because in their head they just see it going one way but don't realize that like those calls they probably were doing it out of the generosity of their heart, like trying to be very compassionate, want to bring food over, like make sure you're okay, but in their head that they couldn't see anything could be wrong. So yeah, that's also like food for thought, because I know when people get pregnant at work, I really love babies, so I'm always like chatting to them about it, but also like being mindful that people are going through a lot. And sorry,
Such 100%.
And Jessica.
So my story is a little bit different. I have two children. My son is 6.5 and my daughter is 4. I conceived my son in 2016, and I struggled a bit with his just pregnancy. I was just about 25, so not really a young mum, but on the cusp. So I didn't think again anything would go wrong. I was working, I was active, I was fine, and then I started to not feel well in myself. And then I went to the hospital. No, I stayed home from work, and I said, like, something's not right. I started to feel a bit of discharge, but as you know, I'm a new mom. I just think maybe I peed myself, or I don't really know what's going on. I didn't see anything concerning. I just thought, something, just pregnancy. And it continued throughout the day. And then I went to shower, when you wear your towel and you sit on the bed and you're just talking. And I got up and there was a wet patch, and I was like, what's this? And at the time I was home with my mom, and I told my sister, I was like, check me. And she's younger than me. She was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. There's nothing there. So eventually I called, my midwife. I called the team at maternity services, and I said, this is what's happening. I just got up and it's wet. They're like, oh, your waters have gone. And I was like, how? Because I'm 24 weeks. Like, how? That's not right. And they were like, come in. So I went in, and then same kind of thing with you. I was at a hospital. I booked at a hospital that's not a specialist hospital. So they were like, yep, your waters have gone. Your baby's potentially going to come, going to give you steroids to like protect the baby's lungs. And we need to move you to another hospital. So it was all very like, you're not in labour, you're not contracting, but your waters have gone. And I was like, what is happening to me? Like, I can't believe this is my story. I don't even understand what they're saying. Everyone's just coming in and out. And they let me stay the night and said they'll transfer me to another hospital because I was well within myself. If you saw me, I didn't really have a big bump. I was just fine, no pain. The baby's heart rate was fine. So it was a bit of a up and down situation. So eventually in the morning I went to another hospital and they were like, yep, baby's coming out. I've been to the labour ward more times than I've had children. Let's put it like that. I was just, every day the baby's coming, but the baby wasn't coming. So fortunate for me, I stayed in the hospital for about 12 days, just putting my feet up, resting. Baby was fine, but the risk of infection, when you're in hospital for long, so they eventually discharged me and said I had to be on sick leave, stay at home. And then I was like, okay, fine, that's fine. I'm not going to work. I'm just going to stay here, not move, not walk around. I had to wear pads because I knew I had basically premature rupture of the membrane. So I had a little tear in the membrane that was just leaking. They checked the levels to make sure it wasn't dangerous. And obviously at risk of infection, I had to be really careful. And then one silly day, I decided to walk around a little bit because I was tired of sitting on my bum. And then I saw blood when I went to the toilet. And I was like, I've been seeing, water or liquid, and now I'm seeing blood. So I went back in and they said, you have low-lying placenta. It could be the placenta moving. We know that you've had prom for about 5 weeks. By this time, it's about 5 weeks. So baby could be coming. We were aware. So I stayed in, I had scans. And then I was like, I think I was in on a Thursday and it was like the weekend and there was no blood. So I thought, maybe it's the placenta moving out the way, getting ready for birth. And then I said, I'm not going to move. I'm literally going to lie in this bed so I can be discharged. And I woke up after I saw the doctor and there was so much blood. And luckily for me, I had a family friend who was a midwife at that same hospital. She came to see me and she just calmly said, like, we should just go to the labour ward. And she just took me, and not knowing to me that my placenta had erupted. But all this time I was fine. I did not have any pain. I did not feel anything. I don't even understand what's going on, really and truly. So I was there for a while, and it just escalated. Like, I was clotting. It's quite graphic, but I was clotting really heavily. I thought it was my baby. If I'm honest, I just didn't understand what this was. And then the midwife said, we're going to have to, they thought the baby would come naturally, but he wasn't. He was just relaxing. So I had an emergency C-section, and my son was born premature at 29 weeks, 29 plus 3 weeks, at 1.143 kg. So quite small, but still quite big for that age, I would say. He was absolutely healthy. God being so good. He was amazing. He was just small. So he was in hospital, the neonatal unit, for about 8 weeks, just because of his size. Thankfully, he didn't have any operations or anything like that. So during that time, it was very difficult for me, for my mental health. I was struggling, with pumping. I didn't really understand. I couldn't bond. I was always crying. I was always tearful. But I was never signposted to any support services because I have a big family. My mum, my dad, aunties, uncles, everyone was coming to check on me, give me food. I was that person that had someone at the waiting room every day, to come and see the baby and see if I was okay. But I was really I was there Monday to Sunday every single day, from opening to closing, because I couldn't stay there because I lived close by. And they were take pictures and try and wake up at night and express. But I was very lonely in that time. I had my partner, I had my mom, but I was extremely, my mental health was affected. But because I've got amazing support system, I was never signposted. I was never drawn to any services. I didn't speak about my mental health. Fortunately, I was okay in the end, but it did really affect me, that period, when he was in the hospital for 8 weeks, and a lot of attachment issues. I couldn't be by his side due to the logistics of the hospital. If you live near, you can't really be there. So that was what led me to working with Amplifying Maternal Voices. So when the position came out for manager, the outcomes and the objectives of the project really led dear to my heart, around supporting women who you don't really hear from. So we call them seldom heard communities, but they're not hard to reach. They're just accessing a different audience due to birth trauma, due to failings. And I applied, and I was successful to become the project manager for Amplifying Maternal Voices.
Thank you. I'll just go on to touch on mental health a bit more. So you're all, brave isn't the right word, but I guess courageous to be telling your stories, and you do it so articulately and compassionately. But experiences of fertility treatments, baby loss, pregnancy in general can be physically and emotionally demanding. How did you take care of your mental and physical health during that time? I'll go to Jessica first, because you touched on it, and then go to the others.
So for me, I would say I was avoidant, really. Lack of knowledge. I just didn't really understand what was happening. I know about postpartum and about anxiety, but I was told it was normal. Your baby's in a neonatal unit. Why will you be happy? Why will you not be tearful? Why would you not feel low? So I just leaned on my friends and family. But I would be honest, I didn't seek out any support. I didn't, really reach out. I just kind of leaned on my family and said, this is a normal experience. And I leaned on my faith, and I will pass this situation, and I will be there for my child. So I tried to turn my pain into passion and support people now going through the journeys of signs. My sisters have had children. So, advocate for yourself and kind of be there as a support for their mental health during the perinatal period, because it's not just, from conception. It's I really just lean on friends and family and support for them.
Yeah, thank you. And Funke?
Okay, so a bit similar to Jessica's journey. So I did attend a few support groups with STANS, and I also later on, further down the line, trained to be a befriender. But I think for me, my issue wasn't so much about the support group. I think my issue was more a fate issue, because I felt, why would God let this happen to me? So I didn't have any issues, even in from the medical perspective, there was a bit of negligence. But I think for me it was more a faith question. So I spent time just kind of reflecting, reading a lot of faith books, reading my Bible, reading stories of people who've been through similar journeys, or had suffering, or been through, issues of life, just to kind of get my head around those questions of the why question, and why would something like this happen, and why did bad things happen to good people, and things, all those philosophical questions. I think that's kind of where I was at. I spoke a lot to my husband. We processed everything, talked about everything, dissected everything. And I think talking about it helped me. And later on, I also started blogging, and I think I found that very therapeutic. And I found that very, like a healing process. It also helped with that journey further down the line. And after I've been through all of that, worship songs, gospel songs kind of helped me through that process, because I listened to a lot of songs, and that helped me process some of the things I was feeling. Because of my Christian faith, Bible verses, I call them my hope affirmations, help me process that journey and look forward to the future as well. And also learning from other women who walk that path. So I think, and I said, earlier on that, 17 years ago, there were not many support groups. There were some, but also some of them were not, you couldn't see some that related, or that were linked with what I experience. So things for Black women, there was hardly anything. So in those days, only STANS was quite visible. But I went to some, but I thought they couldn't answer some of my questions. And I think that kind of led me on this journey of wanting to support other women. And I do that in different ways now. And also I think looking towards the future in terms of what do I want my future to look like, and thinking ahead and having that kind of dream of what my future would look like. And I think that kept me going, in terms of knowing that this is not the end, and there'll be something good at the end of this process, and and there'll be joy, despite the pain. So I think for me, those are some of the things that helped me on that journey.
Thank you. And Vanessa?
I think similar to Jessica and Funke, really, it was a multitude of things. I would say personally for me, writing is my thing anyway. So writing was really, really helpful in the fact that it drew people to my story for them to then say that they've been through their experiences, and then kind of share the fact that, oh, so you're not alone. And I know it sounds quite cliche when someone says you're not alone, but I think to Funke's point about the intersections of the experiences that we've spoken about, when someone says you're not alone, what I'm hearing is you're not alone as a Black woman. I think Jessica made a point, and the word that was used was in culture. I would say in Black culture, we are quite avoidant. There's a lot to show for in terms of you'll be fine. Don't let anybody know. I'm not going to mention names of people who said this to me. Don't let anybody know that this has happened. And for me, all I was doing was going home and suppressing that, as far as I'm concerned. And then also, I'm a believer. God is very big in my life. In fact, I come from I'm married into a church family. My father-in-law is a pastor. So that trajectory, everybody's sharing with you, the fact that people are asking questions. So I couldn't avoid it. Then also the advice would very much be, carry on fasting and praying, or God knows why this happens. And I had to get to a place where I thought, I'm not a bad Christian, or I'm not a bad believer, because actually I don't want to be avoidant. I don't want to say that everything happens for a reason. I actually want to sit with that feeling, and I want to be okay. Even when if you read, what I'm getting from both of you is that you read the Bible and you immerse yourself into the stories. Actually, when you read those stories, most of the times when they're going through suffering, there were questions. People were questioning God and saying, I'm angry. Or David a lot spoke about there was a lot of travail. And for me, I had to remind myself of the truth of, actually, biblically, it says that God is closest to those that, a contrite spirit and a broken heart. And I wanted to sit with that brokenness. And that allowed me to actually go into other avenues, the writing, therapy, Sebastian's 5, the baby's, God willing, 2 in the next month. But years on, I am still in therapy because in summary, God, faith, and therapy can coexist. They can coexist. And for me, it was embracing the fact that all of those loopholes, if you like, all of those ways of support was part of the healing. It wasn't, they can't work in silos. And actually, if it was just me simply sticking to scripture or something that happened to Sarah how many years ago, that wasn't going to heal me. It was promising, but I needed something substantial. I needed to watch YouTube videos. I needed to read form case blogs, something that felt okay for me to understand that there are other ways that I can deal with this. And I think when I got to that point, that's when I started to see a change in how I was dealing with it, and just embracing the fact that this is what I'm going through, and it's okay to be sad about it. It's okay to be angry. It's sometimes as well. There were times when I'm seeing peers, a certain point in time in life where you're all kind of going the same path, and you're thinking, hold on a second, you spoke about rite of passage. We very much have this way of thinking, the fact that get married, have a baby. So when I'm seeing couples that got married 5 years after me, it should be this way, but they're now on to third baby. I've had to deal with those feelings. I had to sit with those feelings and process them. And I think that was the best thing for me, because it just allowed me not to hide and not to front, really. I just didn't feel like I'm that kind of person anyway. I don't get anything from not being true to myself and authentic to my feelings. So yeah, that was very much my stance, and still is, to be honest.
No, and it's so true, because if you're bottling, it will just express itself in other ways. Like you'll be like the bitter, I don't know. There's always that like bitter person at work who's like, you're like, no, they do. Like they're coming to work and they're very happy, but they're like bottling all of this
something behind it,
to the water organisation or to whatever, and it's coming out in other ways.
Yeah, it's normally the character. Sorry, just saying it's similar. So, you said, I definitely believe that there's always something behind a certain kind of behavior. So there's something energetic wrong. Yes. So honestly, you're so right. I just totally agree with you about the fact that bottling up, it very much starts to manifest itself in how you relate to people as well. And I didn't want to be that person.
Yeah. No, and I think also, so I'm Nigerian. I think it's wider, like within the Black community. I think like therapy is kind of it's kind of, I don't know, not really seen as, it's definitely like taboo, or like if people are going, they're not, like you said before, like no one's really sharing it. But yeah, I love that you spoke about therapy and that you all spoke about like mental health, because mental health and physical health are just as important as each other. And they like, if someone is like not mentally, this doesn't have like great mental health or like mental well-being, it affects their physical health and vice versa. Keji, I'll just go to you for this question too.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, definitely agree with the whole idea that there is a culture of secrecy and silence, shame and judgment, particularly in the Black community. And myself, I'm also Nigerian, and when women are often expected to deal with mental and emotional trauma in secrecy, and there's a culture of silence which affects women, and there's no space that's created, I believe, for them to be able to voice that out. Things are changing, and women are speaking up a lot more, which I think is a good thing. And so for me, when my daughter was born stillbirth, I think that was really it for me. I just didn't want to be around anymore. And I just couldn't handle the whole experience. And I can remember, soon after she was born, and I was told that we had to organize a funeral. It was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to bury a child. I mean, that just everything home to me, and having to organize that, having to register her death at the registry office, and having to do all that, and going to the cemetery and going through that whole process was very, very traumatic for me. And I think I couldn't find a way out. to not allow myself to get into deep depression, because that was what was happening to me, because I would literally cry every single day. I would walk on the street and I'll be crying and people were looking at me and they wouldn't know why. There wasn't anything anyone could say to me that could actually comfort me at that moment, and I'll be honest with that. And most of the time I find myself in spaces of silence. Silence was a way of therapy for me, because I didn't want to hear people to say it will be okay. I did not want to hear, don't worry, everything happens for a reason. God giveth and God taketh. I didn't want to hear all that. In fact, I didn't want you quoted scriptures at me. I'll be honest with you. And so for me, I had to go into myself in order to come out of myself. And for me to be able to do that, a lot of my therapy was music, particularly praise and worship music that was uplifting, messages that were uplifting. I find myself, engaging with that a lot. And I was fortunate enough to be able to take a year off work. I couldn't go back to my work. I just couldn't do it. I tried it and I was just not myself, and I was crying every single day. And so I took a year out, and that was the saving grace for me. A year out from everyone, a year out from everything, just for me to understand what was happening. And I think the whole experience normalized the cycle of life for me. And I know I'm a person of faith, I'm a Christian, but the whole conversation around death is something sometimes I don't think we want to speak about. We don't want to talk about it. And we don't want to talk about grief. We want to look always at the positive sides of life and not understand that, life is in ways. When you look at the scriptures and you look at the different stories and you look at some of the characters in there and you look at the challenges that they go through and the times where they felt low and down and how they voice and express it in the scriptures. Well, sometimes I feel we overlook that and just look at the positive aspect of our faith. And so I had a lot of battle with my faith. It's not that it didn't stop me from believing in God, but I truly believe God exists. But I had a lot of challenges in terms of why did this happen to me? Was I being punished for something? So I had to go through the whole experience of trying to understand that life happens to everyone. Those, it doesn't matter whether you're in faith or not, a believer, life happens to everyone. So how do I come out of it? I came out of it and focused on how I can use my pain to help others and uplift others out of the same experience. So during lockdown, I was a befriender for SANS. I would go into different meetings online and just talk about my experience. And that was very therapeutic for me because I'm quite a private person, and being open and sharing my experience helped me to release some of the things that I bottled within myself, because now I saw there was a purpose for this experience, and the purpose is actually bigger than I am. And so talking was very, very therapeutic for me. Counseling also, it's just invaluable. And being able to have the right support network around me, particularly my family, very strong in terms of holding me together. And those were the things that helped me to be where I am today. But I also feel that there's a deeper conversation that we need to have moving forward in terms of normalizing these conversations and allowing people to be able to speak up about it.
Thank you, Kechi. And I'll touch on advocacy and also self-advocacy, because that came up in all of your stories. So I'll go to you first, Jessica. So can you share any tips for advocating for oneself within the healthcare system? And based on your experience, how important is self-advocacy as a tool for breaking maternal health barriers?
Yeah, I think breaking advocacy is very, very important. I think in every story or every kind of Black woman's story or trauma or bad negative experience, that's kind of what was missing, sharing, letting your partner know, letting your birthing partner know that, this is what I want in my plan. This is how I want things to go. Speak to me about changes. I'm happy to adapt for the sake of the baby, but I have rights too. And I want to advocate for myself and for my child. So I think it's extremely important. I think it's one of the main things to do in this situation. Speaking up for yourself regardless of the situation, how you're feeling. For me, I knew what I was feeling, but I didn't speak out and I didn't share. And I knew within myself I was going to, but some people don't. And, this is going to affect themselves and their child's mental forward. So I think, in the maternity space, physically, get someone drowsy, get someone to stand there on your behalf for the sake of your physical and your child's physical well. When it comes to your mental health, I think, look at yourself. If you're feeling low, seek out support. My project, we look at grassroots organizations. There's so many amazing work that women have. You also had their pain and turned it into passion. 5 times more. Or the Motherhood Group, Motivational Mums Club. They are doing amazing work on the ground with women. And you can seek out support from these groups. They will help you. They will support, show you the right steps, the right ways to go to support your mental health. So definitely, I think, grassroots organizations or, seek out support for yourself.
Thanks. And did anyone else have anything they wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to, sorry, I'll just jump in. So obviously Maya's legacy all around self-advocacy and how important it is to self-advocacy. And we actually create a self-advocacy tool that's been used in different health bereavement units for women, including in East Kent. But a conversation about self-advocacy, what I've found is a lot better than that, particularly if you come from a certain community where they talk about how children should be well and be quiet. Children are seen and not heard. So the whole conversation of self-advocacy, you're not used to opening up and speaking about it because you have not grown up in an environment where you've been encouraged to voice out how you feel and to be open about it in a safe space. It becomes more difficult, I think, in certain communities for people to speak up for themselves. And so, self-advocacy is part of self-awareness. Who are you? How do you love yourself? Self-love. How do you feel about, do you think that your voice actually matters in the conversation? And when you find yourself in a situation where you're in front of a practitioner, even though they're an expert in their field, you are an expert of your body. Therefore, I always say to people, go into that meeting with all information that you need. Write it down before you go in. So there is the power of dynamic is not one-sided, right? So when you walk into that room, there's a balance. You're not going into a room, everyone is a consultant or practitioners telling you what you need to do about your body, telling you what you need to how what choices you should be making. You need to be clear about what you need. To you. I went to a doctor's appointment recently and I was talking to the GP. What was on screen that she asked me the same question about 4 times. I'm not going to answer this question again. I had those tools because of the experience that attention to me. So I think we need to teach our children about self-advocacy. We don't have to wait for them to go through the challenges that we've gone through to be able to speak up. And that comes from confidence, building their confidence, building their helping them to get to we'll see this begin to trickle down. I can't remember where we. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No worries.
Where we cut off is it when? Did you hear the beginning of what I was saying? Or
yeah, we had like basically everything apart from like probably the final sentence. But I can send the audio file around, and if there's something that wasn't covered, then I can I can add it in the chat or something. Okay. But yeah, I'll just ask everyone the final question. So what did you wish before trying for a baby, and what do you wish your healthcare professionals knew? So I'll go to Keji first for this one. I'll go to Vanessa first for this one.
Thank you. I'll keep it short and sweet. I think, particularly in our communities, it's important to talk about the different trajectories when it comes to. It's important to look at the maternity journey from a full cycle. I think there's a lot of focus on when you're pregnant and after the baby. We don't speak a lot about conception and the routes that it can take. Yeah. Our cultures are very pronatalist, so it's almost like as soon as you're done, yes, we pray for the offspring. It's almost like they didn't come. It took a couple of years. So I just feel that I wish there were people that would say, that's what we're praying for, God willing, but not to cause, scare people, but just to say that the trajectory could be different. It's not the same. Yeah. It's not linear for everybody. Yeah. Now I know that's the work that I'm trying to do. But that's what I wish I wanted to know, that it's not the same for everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Keji, do you want to go next?
Yeah, that's fine. What do I wish I knew? Yeah, I wish I knew that motherhood is a linear path, and the journey to it is not straightforward. I think I was naive about that. I think for me, what I would want the healthcare system to know is I really want to disrupt the monolithic thinking about Black women. We have a conversation about Black women and the experiences with, maternal services, but we bunch Black women as we're all the same, or we're so different. And so I would want the health system, when I'm sitting in front of a healthcare practitioner, to look at me. Yes, I am Black, but to look at me as an individual and have a 360 degrees of who is sitting in front of them. And that means that they would need to take the time to actually get to know me and not think because I'm another Black woman that I'm the same as the next Black woman that they've seen. So I want there to be an individualistic, person-centered approach to dealing with people of different from different communities, really. I know that's hard, but I think that's the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jessica?
I think for me, it's the same, like being a relatively young mother, you would never think, that any type of discrepancies or changes in your pregnancy, like you're just expecting it to be easy, quick, stress-free. But so what I wish I knew before is the same, just that anything can happen and just be more in touch with my body, I think. And I think with the young people specifically, they just think, they're invincible and there's no challenges. Like for me, I'm still waiting on research around my placenta, because with my daughter, she was born with low birth weight and had to come only 2. So, and they said that my placenta was the size of a fist for my daughter, and with my son, it abrupted. So you just think you're healthy, you're not really in tune with your body, vitamins, things like, natural remedies to prepare yourself for baby. And I think, I would want to have known that before trying. And I advocate for my friends that are coming through and my siblings that, really look after yourself, know your body. And what I wish healthcare professionals knew, probably back towards with my mental health, is yes, people come, especially Black families, we've got a large support system, but don't ignore that, don't take that for granted, or don't expect that the person is being seen. Because all it took was when I was alone with my baby in the neonatal unit for someone to be like, are you okay? Here's a leaflet. This is some kind of advice for you going through this. That's what I wish they knew, that, sometimes the people with the biggest entourage need the most help. And I would just, the people that don't come, attending with their baby or they were home, they were getting a lot of attention. But what about me? Like, I'm there every day. I'm there with my baby. I'm engaged. I'm talking. I'm doing the cares. I'm doing everything. But I had no support. I was told it's normal. So, I would want them to know that, I would want them to know that.
And Kunkel?
Okay, so I think for me, quite a few things that have been said resonate. And just to add to that, I think it's the fact that we are enough, because sometimes, someone once said that, don't, your identity is not tied to motherhood. Sometimes we've been brought up to think that, if I'm not a mother, I'm not married, I'm not a mother, then I'm less than others. So I think for me, it's knowing that I'm enough, whatever stage I'm at, I am enough, and that's good enough at that point. And I don't need anything else to complete me. So I think also it's knowing that to live in the weight. I think that's something I've heard over and over again from other women in this community, that it's not waiting to leave when we have the baby. It's not waiting to leave when we get married. But even at this stage, I can enjoy where I am on the way to where I am going. So even in the present, I can be mindful and I can enjoy that season to its fullest. And if the next season does happen, then I can enjoy that too. So in terms of your question about health professionals, being on the other side of the table, having an amazing consultant, I can see the difference. So what I wish my other consultants knew was not to treat me as a number. I think someone I know said something when we lost our baby, that babies die all the time. She had said it just, because she sees babies dying all the time. But for me, it wasn't just the baby, it was my baby. This was a baby I had dreamed of, I had waited for, I had hoped for, I had prayed for, and that wasn't the outcome I was expecting. And sometimes, yes, I know that I can get too much for professionals if you see this day in, day out. And of course, they have to look after their mental health. But it's also being mindful that each patient is unique. Each patient has a life. Each patient is living their life, and they're oblivious to other people. But it's looking at each person and caring for that person. And I know they're only humans as well. But it's going that extra mile to make sure their patients are okay. And I think for me, my consultant always say to her, thank you for everything. She always tells me, what are you saying thank you for? It's my job. I'm saying, no, this is not your job. You've gone over and beyond, because I have seen others do their job and they don't do half of what you do. And if every consultant or every medical staff or every midwife was like my consultant, I think the outcomes would be very different for a lot of women, because she paid attention, she cared, she listened, she helped, she went beyond expectation. And I know that had a big difference in terms of the outcome of my third and fourth baby. So I did not take those things for granted. And I wish that every healthcare professional really cared and listened to their patients and treated them like they would like to be treated.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. And thank you everyone again for sharing your stories and your experience so open about it. And I guess for me as, host/listener, one thing I've picked up from each one of your stories and your experiences is around the importance of listening, because you are experts of your own bodies, what it feels like when something's not right. And therefore when you then raise concerns about pain or discharge, or this feels a bit weird, you should be listened to, because you know what normal looks and feels like to you. And no one else will know that more than you do. And I guess also for someone who, loves babies, or when people are pregnant, and just that whole experience as an outsider, I think one thing I've also picked up on is the importance of checking in. And not checking in to look at the baby and play with the baby, because that is fun and lovely to do, but checking in on the mum, checking in on the dad, checking that people are okay. And I think, I can't remember which campaign it was, but they had adverts a while ago, and they would ask people, are you okay? Are you really okay? Because I think in that hustle and bustle, everyone's like, oh, are you good today? And you're walking past, I'm great. And just out instinct, you just say, I'm good, I'm fine, everything's great. But yeah, just taking the time to hear. And if you are feeling angry or bitter or sad, like Vanessa touched on, to be in those feelings, and that is valid. And as well. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Please do like, subscribe and comment, and we'll also be doing more of these in the future, so please do look out. And thanks again to all of the panelists for joining today.
Thank you.
Thanks.